Good morning, everybody. It's a real honor to be here with you today in this very important event for AI4EU. I will just try now to share my screen. Up. So I'm going then to give you a small presentation about the AI strategy. I was asked to give a presentation in the AI strategy, but what I would really like to do today is to give you the place of the AI on demand platform, the important place this platform will play in the whole European AI strategy. So my name is Cecilia, and I'm head of unit of the unit Robotics and AI Excellence and Innovation. And this is where this project AI4EU was born. And this is a very important project for the whole future of our activities in the whole funding activities that we will have, and for the whole European community in AI, both the providers and the users of the technologies. As it was also said in the previous presentation, you all know that AI has a lot to offer for the citizens, for the businesses, for public interest. So they can solve many of our societal challenges. So many benefits addressing all the society, the SDGs. So we expect a lot from the AI, but also we know that there are some risks linked to these technologies, and they can have issues regarding the safety of the consumer and the user. So we must make sure that we protect correctly the consumers and the user of the technologies. And also they can have threats, they can provide threats to the fundamental rights. So it is essential that we also protect and make sure that the technologies is under control and does not have any risk for our citizens or companies. So this is why at the Commission we have proposed an approach, which is an approach to build an ecosystem of trust and an ecosystem of excellence. So the goal is to provide sufficient rule to protect from the possible misuse of the technology, the possible risk that we've seen before, and at the same time to continue fostering the progress in developing and deploying the technologies as we saw the important benefit it can bring to the society. We want to be able to offer those benefits to our society. So I will first explain you what we do in the Commission regarding the ecosystem of trust. So we want to propose a regulatory framework, which is a risk-based approach. What does it mean? We want to provide uh, rules which are aligned with the level of risk. So we have, depending on the level of risk, we will have different types of rules. And for instance, you see at the top of this pyramid, there's some use of AI we don't want to see in Europe. We want to prohibit because we think that it is not in line with our European values. Then there are a number of high risk. There we see that the technology has a potential impact on the people's life, which is very important. So for this high risk application, we want to, of course, allow them, but there must be some rule to make sure that no one is hurt or is exposed to the risk, the potential risk that the technology can bring. And then there is a third layer, which is AI with a specific transparency obligation. So it's lower risk, but for instance, when you are interacting with an AI system, it's important that the user knows that it is an artificial system rather than a human. So in that kind of application, it's just a requirement to explain, to make sure that the user is not fooled by the system. He knows that it's an artificial system and not a human is or she's interacting with. And then we have the majority of the application of AI, which do not cause any risk or very minimal. And for that one, they are permitted and without any restriction in the context of this proposed regulatory framework. So I will explain you a little bit more what do we mean by the prohibited part. So the part in red, what kind of use case are we talking about? So for instance, you can have system which could manipulate in a subliminal way the user, and in particular the people which are weaker, or the children. So they could manipulate people, and we don't want AI system manipulating people. So that we want to make sure that people are protected from that. The second part is exploitation of children or mentally disabled person. Same thing. We want to prevent AI system from abusing those people. The third one is the social scoring. We saw in some extreme regime that this is something which is used. This is not the kind of thing we want to see in Europe. This is not in line with our European value. So this is also something we don't want to see, and we want to prohibit through this regulation. And finally, the remote biometric identification for law enforcement purpose in publicly accessible spaces. There are some exceptions to that, but the goal here is again to have mass surveillance in that context. So the spirit of these, this is again not in line with what we want to see in Europe. Here, some more information about what we call the high risk. So the second part of the pyramid. So when we want to make sure that we have sufficient protection and we have rules which clarify what needs to be provided to ensure that there is no risk for the users of these technologies. So when, for instance, AI is part of a safety component or of a regulated product. So in that case, there will be some rule to be respected to make sure that the system do not create any harm to the people using that. And there are also another set of application where AI system is used and can have an important impact on the people's life. For instance, when AI is used for instance, to select people for education, or in the employment of the worker in the selection. So you can definitely understand, okay, if a decision is taken for those people, it will have an impact on their whole life. So these are the kind of example we want to be very careful and make sure that they work as intended and they provide sufficient safeguard for the people. So I'm not going to all the list, but it's just to give you a gist of what it is. And then what kind of requirement are we asking for those high-risk systems? So we want to make sure that the data which has been used to train, validate, and test the system are of high quality and relevant and representative for the task at hand. There is a clear documentation for the future, and then the system can be traceable and auditable so we can understand what happened when a decision is taken. There must be sufficient degree of transparency and information to the user. We must make sure that there is always human oversight. So at the end, the human is always in control and can overrule the system. And finally, last but not least, we may have to make sure that those systems are robust, accurate, and there is no possible cybersecurity issue with those systems. So you see that all these requires a regulatory framework, but the technology, the development of the technology can greatly help in addressing part of these topics. We see that the research, there are many research track addressing part of it, in particular robustness, accuracy, but transparency as well, make sure that the system is not biased, and so on. So now I'm going to go a bit more into the development of the ecosystem of excellence. So our unit is at the heart of this development of the ecosystem of excellence. We want to really build a very strong ecosystem of excellence in AI in Europe, bringing all the stakeholders and addressing all the different aspects of the AI, from the basic research to the deployment of the technology. And in that context, we work as well with the member states in the context of the coordinated plan on AI. The goal of that is really to align and join forces with the member states to progress faster together and to create a really truly European AI ecosystem, and to bring as well the technology from the lab to the market. And we have a number of tracks in this coordinated plan. One is to really set the enabling conditions to develop AI. It means provide the sufficient data and high quality data, also computing facilities and resources. The second pillar is bringing the technology from the lab to the market, and this is where we develop this ecosystem of excellence. So this is in that context that we are supporting research and innovation and also deployment. I will go a bit more into the detail on that. Then the third pillar is about skills. We know how important it is to develop the skills and the talent in Europe to develop and use the AI. And this, in this framework, we also address the international dimension. We want Europe to show the way and the example of developing trustworthy and human-centric AI. And the last pillar is of this coordinated plan is really to identify. We have identified a number of important sectors where AI is expected to play a very important role. And again, it's important to join forces and address those sectors such as climate and environment, health. Robotics is also a user of AI, public sector type of application, law enforcement, immigration and asylum, mobility and agriculture. And more precisely, what are we doing to support this and develop this ecosystem of excellence in Europe? One of the most important tools we have is the financial support, the research and innovation programs. And in that context, we have two types of programs. One is the Horizon Europe program, where we continue to support research, development and innovation, from basic research to demonstrator, piloting, proof of concept. So this is the continuation of Horizon 2020. And then the second pillar is the Digital Europe program, where the goal is to support capacity and deployment. And AI is one of the three major technology which is at the heart of this program. And for AI, the focus is on three main aspects. So a pillar on data and cloud, a pillar on testing and experimentation facility for AI, and one on developing further the AI on demand platform. And in addition to that, besides developing building the capacity for the technology, we also have a pillar on developing skills, including skills on AI. And the third pillar is about boosting deployment of the technology, including AI, to SMEs and public sectors. And for that, we will support the creation or the funding of digital innovation hubs. We are calling them European Digital Innovation Hub, and they will play a very important role in disseminating and the uptake of the technology in these SMEs and public sector. I want to come back to this AI on demand platform under the Digital Europe program. You see that it will be very important to link this AI on demand platform with the other part of the program, for instance, the data and cloud infrastructure that will be there. And all together, that we will have a very strong position in AI in Europe, bringing the technology, but also the necessary underlying resources to develop them. Now I'm coming back to the Horizon Europe program. I want here to promote the PPP, public-private partnership on AI data and robotics. It's very important to be part of this initiative, as it gathers all the stakeholders in AI, data, and robotics. It's very important to mobilize the community. Why? To define, to invest and implement the strategy for research, development, innovation, and deployment of those technologies. So if you're not yet part of the association representing the private part of the PPP, I would strongly encourage you to be part of it, and so that you can influence the strategy and be part of this whole community, which will create as well the ecosystem of excellence. So the PPP has just been launched recently, and so please visit and become part of the association to influence and play an important role in that PPP and strategy. In the Horizon Europe program, we will continue funding basic and applied research. And then we have one specific action to develop a network of excellence in AI. And that's very important as well. And then we have a coordination and support action, which includes, you see at the end, the AI on-demand platform for the scientific community. So what do we want to fund here to support? Is the continuation of this AI on-demand platform that has been initiated in the context of AI4EU. And this AI on-demand platform will really target the scientific community, the research community. And we will ask all our projects to put their resource on that platform and vice versa, to use the resource which are on the platform. We expect it to become really a pillar of the whole research in Europe as a source of information, of software, of research result. And this platform should really become a useful tool for the community to develop, to push the progress of the science, to share results, and also to use it to publish also result. And this should also support the career of researcher if you have a strong, let's say, reference point where you can compare results, you can get access to data, and then use that to also support your publication. So this is a very, this part of the AI on-demand platform is expected to play an important role in the research and development field, and the importance to reuse results rather than, again, restarting from scratch every time. Now, just a few words about the Digital Europe program. I already mentioned the important role we see for the AI on-demand platform in the program. And we will call very soon for the AI on-demand platform. There will be a preparatory action, and then this call is already open, and then the implementation of that AI on-demand platform. And this part of the AI on-demand platform should really serve the user and the industry community of AI. And the goal is to bring on the platform all the resources we have in terms of products, in terms of software, to become a one-stop shop for AI in Europe, to help the industry and public services to find what they need in terms of AI tools in Europe. And also this should greatly help the innovators we have in Europe to make their resource available to Europe and have access to the European market easily. This AI on-demand platform is expected to play a key role. So you see, the AI on-demand platform will become the central reference point of AI resources that will be then distributed to all the digital innovation hubs in Europe. And digital innovation hubs will play the role of the dissemination channel for all the resources which are on the AI on-demand platform. So you see how important this platform will have, and this result is content will be available for all stakeholders in Europe. And this is what is also explained here. So we have this comprehensive strategy in the Digital Europe program to deploy the technology and create this capacity in Europe in AI. We have this central box, toolbox, where we have in particular the AI on-demand platform. This will be complemented by the testing and experimentation facilities, and together with the network of Digital Innovation Hub, which will play a key role to distribute all the AI tools from the AI on-demand platform to all the companies, business, businesses and users and public services as well, all throughout Europe. So I hope that with this quick overview, I gave you an impression of the activity we have in Europe, and especially the key role we expect from the AI on demand platform in this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Cécile, for this presentation. And of course, all this topic about ethical issues in AI are very important. And maybe you have noticed, some of you, that with respect to this, there is talk between the European Commission, Europe, and the US. And the White House has published a note recently saying that they will turn to align on EU proposal, probably with modification, rather than draw something by themselves, because they do not think it would be the right thing. So it shows that we are having an effect in this area. So at the end of a project, what I like to do is really to do an assessment of what was done. You will have it done in many ways during these 2 days about the achievements. So I will play another role. I will play a role where I will share with you what was not the thing we did best and why. And I will explain you after why I do that. So you will learn, as I said, what success we had, and of course, this project also went not so well in various dimensions. It is important to assess this so that in the follow-up we can get lessons from it. And as I say here, and we all know, success is important, it gives confidence, but it's only by mistakes that we learn really how to do better. So, at the end of this presentation, I will ask you all, people from the room and people from internet, a few questions for which I do not have the answer, and probably it will be in the future project and the future discussions that we will have to answer them. But first, let's have a very quick reminder about what we promised to do in the proposal, what was realized, and what went wrong, if we may say so, or where we did some mistakes. The proposal was a very complex one, and we made a lot of promises in it, because the call itself was a very complex one, wishing to achieve many, many things simultaneously. First of all, we were asked to build a platform which should be a worldwide attractive platform, a platform which should change things in the AI landscape, not only for Europe, but also for other people. We had to set up this experimentation environment based on an open source software called Acumos. At the same time, we were asked to bring together multiple communities, and there were a full work package dedicated to this. Numerous pilots, you will get more information about these pilots later on in these 2 days. An ethical observatory, which was there to provide ethical information and information about the risk in AI to general public, driven by the University of Venice. There was 3 million euros to distribute in open call, and maybe some of you have been beneficiary for it. We were supposed to set up a foundation to manage the platform and the assets after the end of the project. And there was also the requirement to set up a strategic agenda to help the Commission to define the follow-up. And of course, when you do such project, such proposal, The first rule is to win the proposal. Otherwise, there is no issue. And this was what was told to us and to me as proposal coordinator by some European Commission people. So we followed this, and we tried to build a proposal which was a winning one, and it occurred, of course. So this is how we started, but it had large consequences, which is that we were 81 partners, a very large consortium from 21 countries, with not so much money to do all this. So what was achieved? Very, very simply, we built that platform. We even built two for various reasons. There is not so many difference between the two. It's just the way they are built, which is different. There was this experimentation environment created, and you will get more about this tomorrow afternoon. There is now 3 AI organizations living in Europe, which were created not necessarily directly by the AI4EU project, but along with it. There is this ethical observatory, even if at the moment it is not re-implemented on the platform, it will be at some time in the near future. We distributed the money, we didn't set up the foundation, and of course, there is this strategic agenda, and I assume that the final version will be published in the week to come. So for such a large project, it is normal that not everything goes well. And over the course of the project, you discover that some decisions which were made, either during proposal time or during the course of the project itself, have consequences. And this is more or less the purpose of my talk, which is to say, with the large set, and I will very quickly introduce them later on, the large set of projects going on around the AI4EU platform, we have to be very careful about the way decisions are made and are shared together. So we achieved many results in this project, and this is thanks to all the participants, the executive board members, and all the members of the consortium. Now let me show you 5 mistakes we made into this. It's not necessarily that they could have been avoided. Probably they could not, because we didn't know the consequences at the time. It's just that it's interesting not only to do some self-appraisement, but also to share them. The first one, of course, I will only talk of the platform, because for the rest of the work package, I have no specific things to do. Most of the things were done. The platform was the most complicated things to do, because it is what will be left at the end. First mistake, the biggest one maybe, during proposal time, we didn't put enough money into the development of the platform itself. And there was a good reason for that. With 81 partners, we had to make sure that everyone had some things to do and the fund to do it. But also, it seemed at that time, and especially for me, so it's my mistake, it seemed at that time that it is not rocket science, platforms, we have built many already, and so there is no real issue about it. And that's true. There is no real issue about setting up platform. It's just a lot of work and a lot of details. So this was the first thing. We should probably have allocated 2 or 3 times the money we allocated for the platform. Fortunately, there will be another project starting in a few months with much more money, probably to fill the gap. This was the first mistake. The second one was the pressure. And 4 years ago, we already had a lot of pressure to say, we are late. We are late with respect to AI. Suddenly, Google is coming with his AI tools. Suddenly, we are talking about AI everywhere. So we should speed up. And This is what we did. I'm not saying it was wrong or right. I'm just saying because of that, we didn't took the time to ask people, to ask users what exactly this meant for them. And because of that, we probably started in, as was said, as is said elsewhere, in a centralized way. But because we also were building something which didn't exist. And therefore now there is a reference and we can say this is good, this is bad. But at that time it was not so obvious what should be done. And therefore we started by addressing the setup of the community rather than the experimentation part and not addressing at all the API issues and the interoperability with other platforms because we wanted to have something stable enough so as not to change the API, not to change the, the information we are giving to other platform, to the outside world, so that they could connect to this platform. This doesn't occur this way, by the way. So it is also a way of doing in industry. In industry, we tend to try to deliver product or project earlier. Usually, customers are happy. Okay. In R&D, in European project, it is not exactly the same thing, and it is not the same thing also because up to the end, you have to collaborate and welcome people which you were not expecting before. Again, it was, I am assuming totally this mistake. Third mistake, a more collective one, I would say. There was not a sufficient involvement in this platform during the, let's say, the first year or the first 14 months by the executive board member, by all the work package member. And this was mostly because each one was focused on his own task, developing the community, creating the ethical observatory, driving the pilots, etc., etc. And more or less, in the mind of the executive board member, the platform was a community to be done by one or two work package, and they would have to ask just, I want this or that, and we would deliver it, the makers. At some point, it was done in such a way that the coordination team had to take directly the creation of the specification of this first platform and to design it, which normally we shouldn't have had to do. And of course, we delivered something, but probably in a way which didn't fit the research community. And so there was a kind of collision between management method or way of doing between the few industrials which were there and the many researcher organizations which were in the executive board. The first mistake is that when we realized that, at some point, we turned towards the Commission to say, we have a small problem of funding. There is many ways to address it. Help us to do that. And the European Commission locally was not able to do it. First, maybe because the grant agreement interpretation doesn't give so many room, but also because it was not the way they thought about it. And suddenly we were having a lot of additional projects, 10, 4 ICT 48, 6 ICT 49, which were asking for more from the platform where it was not in the grant agreement. And finally, the last mistake is that we were not asking enough advices from the General Assembly from the 81 partners because we felt it was difficult to ask 81 organizations to give advice. And this was a very big mistake. And again, Many times I said we should ask this advice, and people in the executive board told me, no, no, let's not do that, it's too complicated. And I should not have listened to them. And so it's really a lesson for other projects. Rely to your member, rely to outside users. And last but not least, I want to say I have nothing to do with the COVID-19. It's not my fault, it's not my mistake. I don't know whose mistake is it, but it's not me, this one. Okay? And of course, as I said here, maybe I learned so much with all this mistake. I should do a few more. Okay? So most of it, the problem was that this project was too complex and requesting too many achievements in too many directions. And of course, we could say, after what Cecile shown, that this will be solved in the new project. There will be one platform now dedicated to research and not to having a dialogue between industry and research, and another one dedicated to industry. Unfortunately, it is not that simple. This is a timeline which was presented by members from the AI4EU, from EU work package about what also was shown by Cecile. And we can see that there is a lot of projects. If we add to the 10 projects which are running, 48, 49, the 14 call in the Horizon Europe project, but also many others which are not quoted. ICT 38, a project which has to link with the AI4EU platform for industry. Secure 02, a project which in DG Home is asking to link to the AI4EU platform in Homeland Security, and many others. So, in fact, there is a lot of expectation about this AI on-demand platform, and you have seen this in Cecile's presentation also. Now, here, I'm not asking you to read the hype cycle curve from the Gartner, we all know that. You will have the slides, they will be available, and anyway, this curve is there, okay? What is important is to look at the agenda. And I had no room in the other slide, so I put it here. The agenda is not that good. It's not that easy to make all this fit together. And considering that we add a lot of things in AI4EU, there is much more here to do together, to do in a way which make it work together. It's very complex, and we are coming quite late. More or less, it means that this industrial platform will be there around 2026 at the end of the project. It's far away. When we look at what we have achieved in 4 years with a proposal, a call for proposal, which was 4 years ago, and where the competition is today, we have to be careful about how we address it. Let's have a small look at the competition. There is a very big competitive landscape. I'm not talking about Google, I'm not talking about AWS, Amazon, or Microsoft, or even IBM. I'm talking about smaller companies, and you have some here. H2O, Data Robot, which one is this one? Grid AI, this one on the right, which is Hugging Face, which is today pretending and wishing to become the GitHub of AI and machine learning. Hugging Face is an interesting company. They started in 2015, raising 9 million euros from venture capital. And this year, they $9 million. And this year, they made another call, and they got $44 million for continuing their work. There is 70 people, and they are really active in the NLP world, natural language processing world. So we should not ignore that there is competition, and this competition means that the tools, the services, what will be put in the platform, not only have to exist, but they have to be of excellent quality, they have to be up to date, and they have to be useful and easy to use. So We had an industrial committee 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, and we asked the industrial people what they think about the platform, and this is their answer. Of course, this is industry. It is not research, and it is not what is being asked for research. But it's interesting to hear them saying this kind of thing also. So really, there is a lot being asked for connection with AI4EU, and we have to be careful about it. It's the same for research. When we talk about needs in AI4EU for research in space, Copernicus, for example, or in industry, or in agriculture, even simply talking about data, the needs for accommodating this kind of data are very, very different. In Copernicus or in space, it's very huge set of data. In industry, there is very huge privacy issues. In agriculture, there is a lot of data coming from very small company. So we have to be careful about that. Last slide, the question. We should ask ourselves what I said before. There is an experiment platform. Okay, is it so useful? Is it usable now? What is lacking to be able to use it? Is it better than the competition? Friendly, seamless, easy to use? And do we have to set up a platform in the near future which will pile up services, or do we have to do something else? And I don't know what. Okay. What services are the good one? And what is the collective dream about AI which can be continued and will not be satisfied? Okay. So of course you will have to ask yourself and us also this question. And I thank you for listening to me with this not self prize presentation. Thank you.